Thlen is one of the legendary Khasi gods, whose worship is limited to a few clans and families. From participation in it, all right-thinking Khasis recoil with loathing and horror, inasmuch as it involves the preparation of crimes. For this god can only be propitiated by offerings of human sacrifices, with many revolting and barbaric rites. The clans who are reputed to be the devotees and worshippers of the Thlen are regarded with aversion and fear throughout the country, and to them are attributed many kinds of atrocities, such as the kidnapping of children, murders, and attempted murders, and many are the tales of hairbreadth escapes from the clutches of these miscreants, who are known as Nongshonos. Within quite recent times, murders have been committed which are still shrouded in mystery, but which are said to have indications that the victims were killed for the purpose of Thlen sacrifice. The following folk tale purports to give an account of the origin and propagation of Thlen, the most remorseless and cruel of all the Khasi deities. According to tradition, the Hima of Chera was, in olden times, the haunt of many famous Bilais or gods who dominated the lives of men. These deities were said to dwell in certain localities, which in consequence came to be recognized as sacred places, and frequently to be called after the names of the Bilais. Foremost among these gods were Yu Ma Long Siem, and the hill where he supposed to dwell is called after his name to the present day, and the inhabitants of certain villages still offer sacrifices to him. In common with mankind, Yu Ma Long Siem is described as having a family, who also in common with mankind took pleasure in dancing and festivity. It is said that people sometimes hear the sound of revelry and the beating of drums within the mountain, supposed to be the drums of Yu Ma Long Siem, beaten to the accompaniment of the dancing of his children, the sound of which invariably portends the death of a Siem or some great personage. The only one of his family whose name and history have been transmitted was a daughter called Kak Ma Kharai, which signifies one that roams about in trenches or hidden nooks. She was well known in the Blai world, and she possessed the power of assuming whatever she pleased. She often assumed the form of a woman and mingled with mankind without anybody suspecting her identity. Many of the Blais sought her in marriage, but Yu Ma Long Siem, her father, would never give his consent, lest his prestige be lowered among the Blais. There was one suitor whom Kak Ma Kharai specially favored. He was the god of Umwai, but her father forbade the union so sternly as to dispel all the hopes of the lovers. This so angered the young goddess that henceforth she rebelled openly against her father, and by way of retaliation she encouraged the attentions of strange and undesirable lovers. When it was discovered that she was with child, she fled from her home, fearing the wrath of her father, and put herself under the protection of her maternal uncle, who lived in Pomdoloi cave, and was one of the famous dragons or yak-jackals of the country. In this cave, a son was born to her, who proved to be a monster of hideous aspect, having the form of a snake and the characteristics of a vampire, who could be appeased only when fed with human blood. This monster they called Thlen. Unlike his mother, Thlen could not transform himself into any likeness but that of a snake, but he had power to diminish or to enlarge his size at will. Sometimes he appeared so small as to be no bigger than a string of fine thread. At other times, he expanded himself to such dimensions that he could swallow a man bodily. In those days, there was much intercourse between Blais and mankind. The latter were privileged to attend the Liu Blai, the fair of the Blais, at Linghing Gakong Khen, the way to which passed the Pom Doloi cave, and many unwary and unprotected travellers fell a prey to the greed of Thlen and his associates. The commonest mode by which these poor unfortunates were lured to their doom was through the blandishments of Kak Mak Rai, who approached them in the form of a woman merchant and dazzled them with the brilliancy of the jewelry she offered for sale. She refrained from killing her captives on occasions, but induced them by promises of riches and immunity to pledge themselves to the services of Thlen, her son. To such as these, she gave a magic ring, known in ancient lore as Yangquid ring or Sati Yangquid, which was believed to possess magic that enabled the owners of the ring to obtain all the desires of their hearts. But this magic was dormant until the owners fulfilled their obligations of Thlen and brought him human victims to feed upon. The method by which Yu Yak Jakor captured his victims was to waylay lonely travellers and to club them to death. Thlen himself, when he grew old enough, also hunted men to death, so that between the three murderers, the ravages made upon mankind were becoming grievous and intolerable. Mankind sought divinations and offered sacrifices to the gods for the cessation of these atrocities, upon which a Darbar of the Blais was called. Yu Ma Long Siem, who was a powerful Blai and a blood relation of the murderers, overruled the Darbar, declaring that no authority could deprive the Blais or the demons of any power they possessed, be it for good or for evil. But to mitigate the distress of mankind, a decree was issued, restricting the number of people to be devoured to half the number of captives. If Thlen captured 2 victims, 1 was to be released. If he captured 10, 5 were to be released. It transpired, however, that this decree helped but little to allay the sufferings of mankind, for murders continued at an appalling rate. Mankind again sought divination and took counsel together, and it was made evident that the only one who could successfully help them was Yu Suidno, the fleeting demon, an erratic and insignificant being who haunted the forest of Lake Ngo to the north of Chera. The Khasis hitherto had never recognized him as of worthy homage, but they went to offer him sacrifices then, according to the divinations. Yu Suidno volunteered to rescue them, but affirmed that the snake could never be overcome without the sanction of a Blai, and inasmuch as the Blais of Cherahima had already refused their aid, he urged them to go and sacrifice Yu Lai Shillong, the god of the Shillong mountain, and to invoke his aid and win his favor. So mankind offered sacrifices to Yu Lai Shillong and received his sanction to wage war against Thlen. Yu Suidno, equipped in all his strength, went forth to Pom Doloi and ordered the Khasis to bring him many fat pigs and goats. These he killed and carried regularly to feed the Thlen in the cave, and this was the manner in which he made his offering. He bored a large hole in a rock roofing the cave. so that the carcasses might be passed down without being seen by Thlen, and so he would not discover that they were not human bodies. He assumed the voice and manner of a Thlen worshipper and called out, "My uncle, I have brought my tribute. Open your mouth that I may feed you." Thlen is described as being slothful and sleepy, never rousing himself except to seek food. When he heard the call from above, he would shake himself and expand to great size, and open wide his jaws, into which the meat offering was thrust. In this way mankind had respite for a time, and the hunting of men ceased. It was evident, however, that they must resort to some other measures, for it was impossible to continue to keep up the supply of fat animals. The Khasis began to grumble at the extravagant proceedings of Thlen, but he always replied to their complaints with the words "Koit koit," signifying that all was well. After a time he told them to hire the services of Ramha, the giant, to assist him in his final struggle against the vampire. When Ramha came, he bade him build a smelting house near the cave, and to make a pair of giant tongs. And such was the strength of Ramha that it only took him one day to build the smelting house and to make the giant tongs. Next day, Thlen told him to heat a large piece of iron and to bring it when it was red hot in the big tongs of the rock on the top of the cave. When this was done, Thlen called out according to his custom, "My uncle, I have brought my tribute. Open your mouth that I may feed you." So the Thlen shook himself and expanded his body to a gigantic size, and opened his jaws for the offering. Whereupon a red-hot iron was thrust in. Upon this there followed the most terrible contortions of the Thlen's body as he tossed about, writhing in his death agony, till the earth shook so violently that Thlen had Ramha swooned from the concussion. When the disturbance subsided, they had revived. They looked into the cave and found Thlen lying dead. Thlen sounded a big drum to summon the people together, and great jubilation and dancing took place when it was announced that their enemy was dead. From that time the Khasis have offered sacrifices to Thlen, and he is held in great honor. The people had a council to consider how to dispose of the body of the Thlen, and it was decided that to make their triumph complete, it was better to prepare a feast and to eat the body of Thlen. So the carcass was dragged out of the cave and was divided on a flat rock into two portions. One portion was given to the people of the plains from the east to be cooked after their manner. The other was given to the Khasis from the hills and the west to be cooked after their manner. The marks of the axe are said to be seen on the rock to this day, and the place is called Thlen, the cutting of the Thlen. The hole which was bored on Thlen in the top of the cave is also said to be visible to this day. It happened that more people came to the feast from the plains than from the hills. Moreover, they were accustomed to eat eels and snakes, so they considered the Thlen meat very palatable and savory. They ate the whole of their portion and departed to their villages happily, and they were never afterwards troubled by Thlens. On the other hand, the Khasis were unused to the flesh of reptiles, and they found the Thlen meat very unsavory and strange flavored. so that when their feasting was done, a great portion of the meat remained uneaten. This caused no little perplexity, for it was deemed possible for the Thlen to come and reanimate the unconsumed portions of his body. So they kindled a big fire to burn all the fragments of the meat to ashes, after which they gave a glad shout, believing themselves forever safe from the ravages of Thlen. A certain woman whose son had neglected his duties and stayed away from the feast was sorely troubled in her mind, fearing that some ill luck might befall him and a curse come on the family because her son had wilfully disregarded the feast of conquest. While helping to gather the fragments of meat for burning, she surreptitiously hid a piece in the fold of her dress to take home to her son. When she reached her house, she put the meat away in a covered vessel pending her son's arrival. When the son returned, he brought news of many misfortunes which he had met that day, and particularly of the loss of much money. He attributed all the loss to his neglect of the important feast. But when his mother told him how she had contrived to bring him a little of the Thlen meat, he was somewhat cheered, hoping that by this participation he might be helped to retrieve his fallen fortunes. To their dismay, when they uncovered the vessel, there was no meat left, only a tiny live snake wriggling about. They were preparing to destroy it when the little snake began to speak to them in their own tongue, beseeching them not to kill him. He said he was Thlen come back to life, and that he was there by the decrees of the Blighs to bring them good fortune for as long as they gave him harbour and tribute. It was a great temptation coming as it did, when they had met with great losses, so, without thinking much of the consequences, they allowed the Thlen to live, harbouring it in secret without the knowledge of outsiders. When Thlen had fully regained his vitality, he demanded human sacrifices from them, which made them shudder with horror. But Thlen was relentless, and threatened to devour them as a family if they did not comply with his request. And when they saw one member of the family after another beginning to languish, fear for their life drove them to hunt their fellow men and to murder them, to propitiate Thlen and to keep his good favour. Gradually Thlen cast his sway over the families also and won them to give him tribute. As his devotees increased, he reproduced himself mysteriously, so that in place of one Thlen living in a cave, where everybody knew him to be, there arose many Thlens, living concealed in the houses of the Nongshonos, who, to preserve their own safety and the goodwill of Thlen, have become men-hunters and murderers, of whom the Khasis live in deadly fear to this day.